Unless you have been living under a rock, you must have heard about Cobblemon. It's a brand new Minecraft 1.19.2 Pokemon mob, which jam-packs the Minecraft world with pixelated, blocky Pokemon to catch and befriend. It has custom animations, Apricon farming, pixelated graphics, and still so much more planned. Cobblemon is still brand new and is a very work in progress mod, so if you're interested in learning more about the project and seeing my journey progress from a lowly noob to the greatest Cobblemon trainer ever, keep watching. Maybe you could even leave a like and subscribe. So my goals for the video are as follows: reach level 100 with any Pokemon, create a perfect base, create an Apricon monopoly, construct my own Pokemon Center, and catch a legendary Pokemon. Through the entire 100 days, these are what I'll be striving for. Okay, you're all caught up now? Alright, let's get into the world of Cobblemon. On day 1, I spawned into a savanna biome, on a singular grass block floating above a pool of water. Seriously, look at this. Okay, anyways, I looked around for a bit to get my bearings before I listened to the ominous text on the screen to tell me to pick my Pokemon. There are plenty of starters to choose from in Cobblemon, from almost every generation. Despite all the options, I couldn't have banned my boy Charmander, who looks absolutely adorable in his blocky form. Now that I have my best friend, I chopped some wood, made a pickaxe, slaughtered an innocent level 1 Bidoof, then hopped around to find any interesting Pokemon or places to explore. Cobblemon thankfully spawns vanilla mobs alongside the Pokemon, so food was not going to be an issue, and I stumbled across a village as I was hunting. Now, I don't normally condone stealing, but all these hay bales were just screaming to be in my inventory, so I borrowed them for later use. Don't worry, I'm sure the villagers don't need food, right? Not only did I steal the hay bales, I also ripped apart their well for stone to craft tools. I never said I was a good person, alright? Anyways, hay bales acquired, stone tools acquired, some food smelted. I think it's time to find a place to settle down. Perfect timing too, because as I was decided to leave the village, the sun went down and I borrowed a random bed to sleep my first night away. I woke in the stranger's bed and immediately got to work smelting some more of my pork chops and fighting Pokemon to level up Charmander. All of the nearby Pidgeys were easy targets and gave enough XP for Charmander to level up to level 13. Before I gathered my things and started to explore, I headed towards a nearby jungle edge biome. I found my first apricon trees, which were growing white and yellow apricons. I grabbed a few and continued running, battling some cartipees and harvesting the apricons along the way. There was such a huge world before me. I could explore and settle down wherever I wanted, but I really needed a place to settle down soon, or these 100 days will just be me hopping around aimlessly getting nothing done. The sun set during my travels, so I slept the night away. On day 3, after traveling hundreds of blocks, I finally found a spot where I wanted to call home. This small cliffside right next to the ocean felt like the right place, and I immediately set up a small home base, aka my bed, crafting table, furnaces, and a few chests to store my goodies. Now, I don't know too much about Cobblemon, but I do know that to heal my Pokemon consistently, I need a healing machine, and for that, I need iron and copper. I had gathered a bit on my travels, so I was able to craft my first healing machine on day 4. Day 5 I returned home after getting lost, which took up the majority of the day. Once home I knew I had to get some materials to craft Pokeballs to expand my team and to make some sort of progress. So I decided to start a mine alongside the nearby cliff face just in the forest. I dug for like 2 seconds before my stone pickaxe broke, so I had to turn back around and craft a new one. I finished off the day by harvesting some green apricons as the sun set, as well as removing some grass and chopping wood before sleeping in my small camp once I was able to. The dawn of day 6 was upon me, and so I set off towards the small mineshaft that I had created, hoping to strike any sort of riches to progress further in my Cobblemon journey. I gathered lots of coal, found some more copper, then found myself ankles deep in water. Actually, it was more like my entire body was submerged as I found a pretty sizable flooded cave with small bits of iron throughout. I knew it was dangerous, but I was not a coward. So I braved the cold waters and carefully mined the iron that was visible, making sure to get air in the nearby air pockets I had made inside the ceiling. Of course, everybody knows that flooded caves usually end in tragedy, and that was unfortunately the case for me, as I got too cocky and swam away with too little health and drowned just before my air pocket. I never said I was the best player ever, and this definitely was not my smartest move. But it's fine. I just hopped back down the mine shaft and gathered all my stuff quickly before it could despawn, leaving before I made the chilly waters my grave for a second time. If this was a hardcore video, this would be such a huge setback, but thankfully it's not. I was able to continue as if nothing had happened. A little embarrassed if you couldn't tell by the Zubat smack I did on the way up the stairs. I decided to kill some time by killing some Pokemon. Well, fating some Pokemon, but it looks like the same thing. They just poof into nothingness after the battle. Whatever, the night was upon me, so I headed off to sleep to avoid the inevitable creepers that would surely explode the rest of my pride. When I woke up in day 7, I crafted some Pokeballs using the blue and red Apricon that I had harvested and some copper ingots, before hopping around to continue leveling up my Charmander. I headed up the nearby mountain for a bit of a change in scenery, nearly falling straight off the cliff. Suddenly, I spotted a Riolu just down in a clearing and I knew I had to catch it. It was super stubborn, and I mean stubborn. I used 8 Zero Balls and a decent chunk of the afternoon just trying to capture this thing, before it finally got tired and decided to be my friend. I was ecstatic. Not everybody can find a Riolu early enough to have it in their second party member, but I was clearly an amazing Pokemon trainer. I ended the day harvesting more Apricons so I could replenish my lost stock of Pokeballs, and I travelled back down the mountain where I sat around some grass, planted a new blue Apricon tree, healed my mons, and went to sleep. Again, you can tell I really do not want to deal with mobs. On day 8, I started running around and fighting nearby Pokemons for more XP. Before starting to chop some dark oak logs later in the day to construct my base, I needed a lot of resources for my base, so of course I went ham with my iron axe. For every building I construct in this video, I've used the replay mod to give some amazing time lapse on my builds. Of course, it actually does take forever as I didn't finish my construction until day 14, but the time lapse definitely makes it seem faster. I had to pause the replay a few times to go and collect more resources, but thankfully a dark oak forest nearby that I didn't take long to collect more wood. I really wanted a nice place to return after adventures with my Pokemon, so I really had to do this base justice as a homey little cabin on the hill, which I think I achieved within the end product. Let me know if you think the same way, or maybe you should comment what you have built differently here. Obviously though, I didn't want this base to take forever, as I only have 100 days, but this base is definitely amazing for the time span I put into it. I'm usually a pretty slow builder. I'll let the time stamp finish now, and then we'll get back into action. Once I finished building, I slept and allowed the sun rise on day 15, where I immediately emptied my inventory into the nearby chest that I had just placed, before I left to clean up the last bit of the campsite I had left over. Of course, as I emptied the chest, I realized my Charmander was level 19, which was strange, because I was certain Charmander evolved into Charmeleon at level 16. But after a bit of looking around in the menus, I realized I was right. I just had to activate the evolve button and the Charmander would evolve, so I did just that. And my friend had now transformed into a Charmeleon, which is now 100 times cooler than it is cute. After I finished cleaning up and sorting all my belongings into my house, I decided I'd spend enough time at my base and I had to get out there and explore. So into a boat and go to traverse across the wide blue ocean in search of a good fortune. May it be items or in Pokemon. My luck was already incredibly high because in just a few minutes of boating, I discovered a ruined Nether portal and a shipwreck right next to each other and easily accessible. The Nether portal had some armor which I equipped, 2 obsidian, a clock and some flint. A pretty average ruined portal chest, but not terrible. I think I got a bit too excited for the gold block because my huge brain used my stone pickers to mine the gold block, and obviously I didn't get anything. My ego was a little bruised, so I pretended like nothing happened and instead laughed at the ditzy slow king that was lounging on the nearby beach. Okay, enough wallowing. The shipwreck had nothing crazy. The only thing of value was some leather armor and a bruised treasure map, which is also pretty close by. So I headed there next. I dug around for quite a while, deep into the night, until I actually found the buried treasure and my shovel didn't even break. Inside was a bunch of iron, some emeralds, food, a water-breathing potion, and a heart of the sea. Of course the iron and emeralds would be useful, but I wasn't sure if the heart of the sea would be used for anything special for Cobblemon, so I decided to bring it along. I decided to remain out of the sea for the duration of the night, so I wouldn't be exploded by creepers or shut out. So I just paddled around peacefully until the sun rose. Day 16 started with the raiding of a tiger village I had found while boating around and avoiding the mobs. I stole a bunch of bread and potatoes and eventually led after the sun rose completely into the sky. After a bit of a tussle with a skeleton taking a dip in the ocean, I hopped around a nearby stone beach and scanned for any surface iron I could easily snag. My wandering led to a ravine, a relatively deep cave with a mine shaft nestled inside. I wasn't quite ready to venture into the mine shaft, but I gathered what resources I could without putting myself in danger like these thunderstones. When I left the cave, I found another small stone alcove on the surface, which surprisingly had a mob spawner sticking out of the cliffside. It was a zombie spawner, and held some pretty disappointing loot. But the spawner was still cool. After skimming that area for all of its resources, like the iron, I left and tried to get some more levels as I ran home. Unfortunately though, I bit off a bit more than I could chew when I decided to battle the Bibarel, the evolution of Bidoof. It fainted both my Charmander and Riolu with a rollout. My healing machine still had to recharge, so as I waited, I noticed the Gyarados had spawned in the pond near my little camp. Just for fun, I chucked a few Azure Balls just to see if... oh well, it's my Gyarados then. Yeah. I caught a Gyarados with 3 Azure Balls and a load of hope. I was finally able to heal my now 3 Pokemon before I continued my journey. I stumbled across an Acacia village and was done and dusted with its loot, and made it back to my house via boat by the end of day 18. Day 19. I just did a few chores around the house like gathering Apricons before I fought loads of Pokemon for XP for the rest of the day. The process is rather tedious and not really intuitive or interesting to watch as of right now. Since Cobblemon is still a huge work in progress and the animation is still being polished out, so let's just skip past this bit. I returned home, healed up and slept. Day 20 and 21 were a lot of the same. Leveling up Pokemon, harvesting Apricons, and I even chopped down some oak wood for a project I had planned for the next day. I was planning on creating some sections in my front yard to plant crops and host some more Apricon trees. And so I did exactly that. On day 22, I started construction of the new farm expansion for my base. Once again, I had a majority of the resources on hand from my house construction, but I did have to pause a few times to collect a bit more. Thankfully, these crop plots only took me until around day 25 to complete, which is considerably less time than the house took. At some point during the time lapse, I caught an Eevee that had spawned around my house. I knew they were pretty rare, so I had to snag it. I didn't have many seeds to plant, but that's alright. I was sure to accumulate more eventually. Small future self note here, these crops ended up being entirely aesthetic, since food was easily accessible later. We have to keep watching to see how I did that. Maybe while you're here, why not subscribe for some more 100 days content like this? Or perhaps comment down below what you'd like to see next. Maybe 200 days? Anyways, I'll let you enjoy the rest of the time lapse before we get back into action. Wow, I think this expansion looks really good for how simple it is. Of course, I can't just stand here and admire my buildings all day. I have a lot of days to get through. So for day 25, I decided to head out in search of a huge cave to delve deep into, and I found exactly that, in the nearby birch forest. This huge cave that sunk deep into the ground. As I was making my way down, I spotted a gas leaf which I decided I wanted to catch for my team. It didn't take long to secure my friend before I delved further into the cave. Fortunately, I climbed down safely and started my expedition, picking up all iron and gold I managed to spot. The cave had led into a luscious cave filled with plenty of moss, glowberries, clay and lots of water. I got a few flashbacks from my drowning mishap from a few days ago and chose to avoid any caves that were completely flooded to save myself the trip back down if I did die. I did find my first diamonds while in these caves. I found 3, which was just enough to craft a pickaxe later. Whilst I was caving, I was found an Alolan Rattata that I really wanted to catch. I had yet to see a regional variant of any Pokemon during my travels, so I knew this had to be special, so I caught it pretty quick in a Great Ball. I found another mob spawner with once again some pretty mid-tier loot except for that name tag. I marked the coordinates of the spawner and kept delving deeper, eventually running out of torches and getting pretty lost. I was able to stay in the caves much longer due to the glowberries that lit up the cave, so thankfully the footage isn't completely dark, but it took me until day 28 to emerge safely from the cave. I should really start keeping track of which way I travel when I'm in these caves, but I never do. I get too impatient for anything planned out normally. Day 29. I used the diamonds I had found to craft a diamond pickaxe while I smelted the iron and gold I had collected from the caves. I decided with the new diamond pickaxe I was going to destroy a nearby ruined portal for the obsidian. So I did just that. Of course, I arrived at the portal just as it turned night, so I dug myself into a hole and resumed the obsidian heist the next day. Day 30, I ran off with 14 obsidian and continued farming for some levels, discovering a level 45 Miss Magius in the nearby dark forest. I decided to throw a few great balls at it, just in case I got lucky enough to catch it. Well, of course I was lucky enough. I'm Mr. Superior Trainer, obviously. I didn't want to use any high level Pokemon before achieving that level naturally with at least one of my mods, so don't worry about any unnaturally dranky progression based on luck. That Miss Magius will be stuck on my PC for a while. As the sun set, I caught a Krabby and a Slowpoke on the nearby beach, before killing some nearby sheep and narrowly avoiding some zombies as I slept the night time away. A lot happened between day 31 and day 34, so I'll try and condense it to keep things interesting. For the entirety of day 31, I ran around exploring and catching new Pokemon, such as a Rhyhorn, which later becomes a member of the team. At the same time, I passed the interesting Pokemon that weren't cool enough to catch, that is huge Fiero, and at the same time, I was killing a lot of cows, and I mean a lot, seriously. I looted a village, then stumbled into a jungle where I caught a Butterfree. This vibing monkey killed a few more Pokemon along the way. I had to sleep in the middle of throwing Pokeballs because this mon was so ridiculously stubborn and would not get inside the ball. Thankfully, I caught it in the morning of day 32 before sprinting off to explore some more. I caught a Bellsprout, watched it execute slide around, gathered some bamboo from a nearby bamboo forest, ran across a jungle edge through a savannah and looting an Acacia village where I pillaged all their planted seeds, then murdered even more cows before the sun started to set. I slept and on day 33 I continued my cow rampage, and I really mean rampage. No cow was safe. Soon I spotted some pandas and a Tangela across the cliff. When I approached, I discovered a friendly Tarkle buried in the grass as well. I managed to catch both of them before greeting the pandas and continuing my travels. I slept once more when I could, and on day 34 I decided I should start traveling home. Not without getting distracted almost immediately by a nearby desert biome which transitioned into a mesa biome. I explored around for a little bit, discovering a village and the biggest coral reef I had ever seen. I returned home on the night of day 34 and slept into day 35. On day 35, I did a few chores around the house like planting more crops, especially the tons of new wheat seeds I had, harvested my apricons and put all the raw beef I had to smelt. If you were wondering, yes, this beef is the reason why my crops became sort of aesthetics only. I crafted some ultra balls with some gold, and as I was looking around the recipe book, I discovered the recipe for the XP shell, which required a diamond helmet, prismarine crystals, 2 glowstone blocks, and 2 iron ingots. I knew that I needed to get this item because it would make leveling go that much faster. I really needed that since I was still pretty low leveled for day 35. Of course, I ran back to that huge cave that I got lost in before, this time exploring a different section, catching a nose pass on my way down and finding myself in the largest open cave I had ever seen from the 1.19 update. Like seriously, this was huge. As I attempted to find a safe place to climb down, I found yet another mob spawn. This time, it was a skeleton spawner. Once again, the loot was just average. Just near the monster spawner, I also found waterstone, which was perfect, as I could use the craft as a mystic water item later. I found a quarter garbuntula, found 2 diamonds nearby, then used some waterfall to drop down into the lowest level of the cave, and started lighting it up almost immediately. This place was crawling with mobs as is, so I wanted to prevent future mishaps. As I hopped around slaying mobs and lighting up the area, I found diamonds! There were 4 of them in this vein, and I needed just 1 more for what I had planned. This huge cave made the perfect location for larger Pokemon to spawn, which is exactly what happened. As I turned around at one point and saw an Onyx and a Gengar, I knew I had to capture both of them, so that's exactly what I did. And the Gengar was a bit more stubborn than the Onyx, but I caught both of them eventually. While I was lighting up the flat lower floor, I was swarmed by mobs, and somehow I managed to kill a creeper with skeleton arrows, dropping a legitimate disc. I was very excited if you couldn't tell, especially since it was one I hadn't looted yet. After that exciting ordeal, I mined 4 more diamonds before I ran out of torches to light up the lower level. So I chose to climb up into a section of the cave filled with glowberries and moss in an attempt to find any more holes to scrounge up. Soon I had no more caves to explore, and I sifted through a large portion of all visible ores. So I made the long trek up from where I came from, and emerged from the surface as the sun set. Of course I returned home and slept cozy in my cabin. Day 36. I started by dumping all of the loot I secured yesterday in my not so organized chests. I managed to collect 10 diamonds, which is more than enough for what I had planned. Of course, after the sorting, I used the water stone I had collected and 4 strength to craft a mystic water item, which increases the damages dealt by the water type attacks. Of course, I wanted to give the items to the Gyarados to hold, but I wasn't sure how. After a bit of finessing and a quick Google search, I learned you had to crouch and right click to give the held item to your Pokemon. Not something my tiny brain even considered. I crafted the diamond helmet at some point and returned my attention to the XP share, which now just set in that I needed a glowstone for that recipe. And for that, I need to travel to the Nether. A dark and hellish landscape, most likely filled with strong and dangerous Pokemon in every corner. I needed to prepare, and also build a spot to house my portal, so I knew I had to get work done. So I started a small cave down below my crop fields and next to the ocean. And time-lapse time! I wanted to go for a hidden grove type of portal room, but also wanted to be a multi-purpose room. So, I decided that it would also house my enchanting table. I started mining at the cave that would house the portal and the enchanting table, making sure to keep it as organic as I can. At some point during the time lapse, I walked out the house and saw a Torchic spawned, which is an incredibly low chance of happening. I scrambled to record the footage, and despite it being incredibly stubborn, I managed to capture it. I'm a sucker for fire type starters, and the Torchic definitely was no exception. Anyways, not much else interesting happened, so I'll let the time lapse play now and get back to you when we're back in action. I'm super proud of this build, but obviously it took me a few days to complete, especially when I had to delve into caves to get that moss and such. So it was around day 40 that I was finally finished and ready to head into the Nether. Actually, I sort of realized the Nether would be super dangerous and my Pokemon were pretty low leveled, so of course I had to grind out some levels, which is a bit tedious at this point. I wish there was a faster way than this, I can't lie. By day 42, my Charmeleon was able to evolve into a Charizard. And I also decided to use a Leaf Stone to evolve my Eevee into a Leafeon. With my increased levels and stats, I decided to face my fears and dive into the Nether, since the XP share would be invaluable. I knew that the Nether was dangerous, but I was terrified, especially since the Crimson Forest I spawned next to was home to dangerous Hoglins, which proved to be a huge problem. I had to dig into the walls so I wasn't obliterated by their high damage. Thankfully, that gold armor from the ruined portal all those days ago was still equipped, so I wasn't worried about piglins. After a bit of hopping around, finding mostly Ghastly, Haunter and Gengars, I found Glowstone guarded by piglins who were too stupid to realize my gold armor hid my very much human skin. I got what I needed and decided to just get out the Nether to avoid an untimely death from Hoglins or from falling into some lava. Day 43 began with me instantly hopping into a boat, search of a prismarine crystal to finally craft this XP share. I found a few shipwrecks, finding a treasure map inside which was really close. But then when I got there, I dug around until my shovel broke and just couldn't find the chest at all. I didn't want to waste my time on a potentially broken treasure chest, so I just continued looking for any structure on the ocean floor. Thankfully, just a few hundred blocks away was a sea temple, and I knew that the guardians had a low chance to drop the prismarine crystals. So after a few jump scares from the elder guardians, watching squid murder and defeating guardians left and right, I finally got a prismarine crystal drop. I got out of there as quick as I could because those guardian attacks did some serious damage, and I wasn't looking to die all the way out in the middle of the ocean. I returned home day 44 and crafted the XP share to immediately give to Riolu. I wanted Riolu to catch up to Charizard in levels, and this felt like the only way to achieve that, since they were struggling big time. Of course, I had to test out my new XP share, so I battled Pokemon until I got a little bored around day 46. For a bit of change in the grind, I decided to run around any nearby chunks and gather as many Apricons and Apricon seeds as possible. Since I was planning on expanding my Apricon farm in the near future for the goal of the Apricon monopoly, of course I needed seeds for that farm to become reality, and I needed Apricons currently for Pokeballs. So it is a win-win anyhow. Of course I went a little crazy since it's so easy to hop around aimlessly harvesting Apricons, especially when you have good music playing. So I returned home the next day. The dawn of day 47 brought an incredibly rare spawn, Gible, who was just chilling in the nearby cliffs. Gible is such an amazing pseudo-legendary evolution line, and Garchomp is such an amazing Pokemon. Of course I wanted this Gible desperately, and after a few unsuccessful Ultra Ball tosses, I decided to battle Gible and lower its HP. So, I kind of sort of forgot how powerful Charizard was with a stab move, and that fainted the Gible, if you couldn't tell by my long pause after the whole ordeal. I was devastated to say the least. So I just returned to my tasks around the house like my crazy Apricon obsession. Thankfully, my luck wasn't running thin just yet, as on day 48 I was cutting down oak woods for the Apricon farm. I noticed something peculiar about a nearby Wooloo. It definitely wasn't the right color. I just couldn't believe it. My first shiny on the first 100 days. I caught the Wooloo and ran off to the PC to confirm my speculation. And yeah, that Wooloo was definitely a shiny. You can tell by the red star in the upper right hand corner of his profile photo in the PC or the info menu. Wow, maybe killing that Gible accidentally was good luck after all. I finished cutting wood before heading home to sleep. Day 49 dawned, and I had two of my next build projects planned in my head. For one of them I was certain I would need a lot of white blocks, so obviously wool came in mind. I heard rumors you could share Wooloos for wool, so I had to try that, and surprisingly you could? I set up on my mini adventure, hearing an insane amount of Wooloos and sheep as I went. I also had another goal in mind as I ran, headed towards the jungle biome. I was still really butthurt about the accidental fainting of that Gible, so I decided to head to the jungle where I knew its entire evolution line could spawn. After my whole sheep shearing shenanigans, I camped out in the jungle from day 50 to 53, grinding some XP levels on catching any rare Pokemon I saw. I would have stayed in the jungle longer, but during the night of day 52, I fought monsters near the beach when I caught a glimpse of something blue in the distance. It was Gabit, the second evolution of Gible, and it was level 43. This was insane luck because not only did it match with my party's level, it would soon evolve into Garchomp. I had to redeem myself and catch this Gabit, and that's exactly what I did. It took a bit of persuasion through battling and a few of my Pokemon did faint, so I was getting nervous. But of course I pulled through and bagged that Gabit. I headed to home ASAP because that Gabit was now sitting peacefully in my PC. When to be honest, it should be in my party. So for the rest of day 52 and throughout 53, I headed home with Gabit on my mind. I finally returned and exchanged Leafeon with Gabit. Sorry Leafeon, I do love you, but it just isn't working out. I also decided that since my levels were in the early 40s, it would be alright to exchange my Haunch for the high level Gengar I caught all those days ago. I'm so sorry little man, loyalty means nothing if there's someone stronger. On day 54, I decided I had enough Apricon seeds to create the ultimate Apricon farm. So that's exactly what I did. You know what time it is? Time lapse time! This build shouldn't have taken me that long, but of course it did because I overestimated how much terraforming I wanted to do. I cleared all of this dirt, and although I used a lot of it, I still had so much left and really could have saved myself some time. But why do I do that when I can endure the pain of endlessly shoveling dirt until the end time? Well, I did save myself some time because I crafted and enchanted a diamond shovel. Don't judge me, it was a good use of my leftover diamonds because things went a lot quicker afterwards. Alright, I'll let this time lapse pay through and we'll get back to action once my Apricon monopoly is complete. Honestly, for it being a glorified orchard, this is a pretty cozy looking. It was day 61. After I finished the Apricon farm, I decided to run around near the house and gather some resources like andesite, copper, coal, basically anything I laid my eyes on I thought I could use. I had the jump scare of a lifetime with the creeper while I was mining coal, and honestly, I am once again so glad that this wasn't hardcore, because I played so risky when I had my music playing. I was continuing my journey around when lightning struck in front of me, spawning a skeleton horse. If you know anything about skeleton horses and thunderstorms, you don't mess with them at all. So I just decided that seeing one was enough a risk and I ran back home to sleep and night set. Day 62, I decided that I would head into the Nether and attempt to find Nether fortresses. I'm not sure why I even felt the urge to do this, but considering I was still waiting on my Apricon trees to grow for my monopoly to be truly complete, I decided why not. Running around the Nether was terrifying in itself. I hated absolutely everything about this place, and yet I still persevered. I got distracted once to mine a few bits of glowstone, but I eventually came across a treasure bastion, which I was tempted to go loot. However, I felt a bit underprepared for a bastion, especially on hard. I was going to attempt to sneak in, but then I saw a piglin crew outside of the walls and decided pretty quickly to just move on and save the bastion for later. I continued searching, but there was no luck at all, and while sat in the middle of the Crimson Forest with no fortress inside, I did a quick Google search just to make sure I wasn't looking in the wrong place. But I kind of confirmed that biomes didn't matter, and I was just a horrible locator. I genuinely spent what felt like ages looking around a place I didn't even want to be in. I left frustrated and all too sick of the Nether. I decided to head back and emerge in the overworld once again on day 64. So from day 64 to day 70, I was collecting resources and grinding for Pokemon levels. If I was to be anywhere near level 100 on at least one Pokemon, I had to continue the grind now, or I might not ever get there by the end of these 100 days. From what I learned though from grinding for levels on Cobblemon, it is super tedious, so I tend to just throw on some music, collect resources if I need to wait for spawns, and just exit. Rare candies and XP are planned for the future, but right now they are inaccessible in survival. So unfortunately, no speedrunning this even if I wanted to. I had to craft my own bed a few times because of how many mobs were around. Perhaps I should invest in some torches? Either way, my Pokemon were much stronger by the time I headed home to sleep and wake up on day 70. On day 71, I started by harvesting more Apricons. Now, I had all these Apricons, but my Monopoly barely has a use right now without an efficient way to process ingots to craft Pokeballs. What my Monopoly needs next is an Auto-Smelter, where I can drop in ore and forget about it until I need more Pokemon. Now, the issue with that is I haven't made an Auto-Smelter in a very long time. And actually, the last time I tried it, it didn't work, like at all. I can build a house just fine, but the second you put redstone in front of me, I'm lost. Thankfully, my pride is not lost, as after I dug out the area just above my apricon trees for my smelter to sit, I just googled a little tutorial. This is how you solve problems, people. Of course, I still struggled and it took me a little bit longer to build than I would assume since I kept referencing the tutorial. But once the technical jargon was hidden behind this wooden wall and the cave was now beautiful in the same style as my enchanting room, it was done! I couldn't figure out why this one furnace wouldn't work, but it's fine. My brain is too tired and fried to even attempt that. It took me until the night of day 74 where I just decided to sleep it off and start fresh day 75. Now I had this amazing smelter, I just needed a ton of resources to smelt. Obviously, you know I had to head back to the gigantic cave I had started exploring on day 35. Wow, that was a long time ago. I got a bit lost heading down there, but I found my way into the large sanctum and absolutely tore up every visible ore I saw. Nothing was safe. I found quite a lot of diamonds and turned a 3 vein into 8 with my Fortune 2 enchant on my pickaxe. Ever since the 1.18 update when ores were fortunable, the Fortune enchant became so powerful. I had a few mishaps with mobs where I was a little scared I might die, but I never did, thankfully. I even scrounged around the luscious caves again to make sure I'd gathered everything. By the time I was finished mining, I managed to traverse myself up and out of the caves. It was day 78 and I hopped home with my riches. I ended the trip with 12 diamonds and loads of iron and gold. Honestly, looking back at the footage now, running around those caves was so disorienting. I'm sure if I had strip mined, I might have had more resources at the end, but that's boring. The height of the expedition was all of those diamonds, which I surely use later. From day 78 leading into day 79, I sat AFK in front of the smelter. I honestly can't even remember what was so important, but I decided to let the smelter run as I was gone. So efficient. Day 80 to 81. I wanted to start on the Pokemon Center as soon as I could, since 100 days was quickly approaching. First thing that morning, I mended my pickaxe and crafted a lot of Ultra Balls just in case I saw some interesting Pokemon spawns while I was exploring. I had an idea in mind for my Pokemon Center and I needed a lot of red terracotta to make it happen. So I hopped on a boat and headed to the mesa. It took me a majority of the day to get there, but once I did, I got distracted by a Natu which I had yet to catch, as well as a bunch of other interesting Pokemon that I had barely seen because of my base's location. The desert is much different compared to the plains. I was pretty excited about this center scorch, but I accidentally fainted it and had flashbacks from Gibble. Damn. Anyways, I continued harvesting my terracotta and even stopped for some sand eventually while catching basically every Pokemon I knew I hadn't seen yet. By the time my inventory was filled and my need for new Pokemon quenched, it was day 83, so I headed back home. Well, I actually got a bit distracted in the mesa mineshaft since I just can't help but explore surface structures. I got a bit scared of the repeated cave spider spawners I found in such close proximity to each other, so I just left. Of course, because of travel time, I ended my journey the night of day 84, so I slept and let myself start fresh at home on day 85. Day 85, I woke up and immediately headed to the Nether after putting my loot away and sending my sand to smelt into my auto-smelter. I had all the red terracotta now, but if you've ever seen a Pokemon Center, the exterior walls are usually white. I knew the exact block I needed, quartz. So I faced my fears and hopped into the Nether in search of the pearly white crystals. The Nether was actually pretty peaceful since I had remembered to craft and equip a gold helmet. I caught a few Pokemon in the Nether and got plenty of quartz, and even managed to kill multiple ghasts with their own fireballs. When I was finishing the Nether after getting lost, I managed to find the portals and emerged onto the night of day 88, so I slept quickly to avoid any creepers. Day 89. I harvested some birch wood in preparation of my new build, as well as set up a chest to store some blocks I needed. I also ran around and gathered some red dye to change terracotta to red instead of the bland orangey color. Of course I had to abuse the bone meal and make some rose bushes to make this collection a bit faster. After I had accumulated everything into one chest, I started building the Pokemon Center. And of course, into the time lapse we go. Pokemon Centers are such a nostalgic thing that I tried my best to replicate, with a few reference photos to keep my ideas in check of course. This time lapse is pretty short, but it took me a bit longer because I had to pause a few times to head back into the Nether and gather more quads. And even glowstone at some point. You'll see why later. I'll let the time lapse finish and we'll get back into action soon. Is when I finally finished the Pokemon Center, and I think I did a fantastic job. It definitely looks like a Pokemon Center. If you remember my goals at all, one of them was to reach level 100 with at least one Pokemon. And looking at my party, I'm nowhere near done. My highest level in the early 50s, so that's a bit of a problem. During my leveling up grind, I realized that Riolu was ready to evolve. I totally missed this before. My partner from all those days ago was now finally grown up, and I even evolved Gabby into Garchomp and Rhyhorn into Rhydon. My team was looking stacked, but still had a long way to go. I really wish there was a faster way to accomplish this, like rare candies or XP candies, but at last those have yet to be implemented. XP grinding really comes to a halt around these levels, and despite my best efforts from day 93 to day 99, I barely made a dent in my Pokemon's level. I finally reached day 99 and was super frustrated. These entire 100 days I had not encountered a legendary Pokemon at all. So I did some reading, and this was when I learned that they don't even actually spawn naturally yet, and I was devastated to say the least. Of course I wasn't going to let the game setback stop me from completing a goal, so I climbed to the highest mountain nearby and then climbed back down, because there wasn't really much space there, and instead chose the second highest peak nearby. I cleared out some area and personally summoned one of my favorite legendary Pokemon to battle, Rayquaza. Rayquaza was a start level 70 and was pretty intimidating, but I was ready. My Charizard wasn't though, and fainted pretty quick, so I sent out Lucario and threw out an Ultra Ball. I can't make this up. On the first Ultra Ball I tossed, Rayquaza was captured. I finally felt accomplished. I dashed home and used my PC to put Rayquaza into my party. Sorry Rhydon, you gotta go. Loyalty isn't my strong suit. On the last moments of the day 99, I climbed back up the mountain and watched the final sunset on my Cobblemon journey, before heading to bed. Thank you so much for watching this video. These types of videos take forever to make, so please give the video a like or even subscribe if you want to see more content such as this. Ultimately, Cobblemon is such a promising mod and was such a treat to enjoy day to day, despite the more tedious and boring parts. But a game like Minecraft is sometimes like that, and I think most casual sandbox games have their moments of grindiness that are just unpalatable. But we managed because we love this game. So I failed my goal of reaching level 100 with one Pokemon, but that's alright, because I did complete my goals of creating a perfect base, creating an Apricon Monopoly, building my own custom Pokemon center, and finding and catching a legendary Pokemon. Well, within reason. And that's it. There's still loads to do in my Pokemon journey. Perhaps we might revisit this place someday, but for now, that's all I have for you. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.